The galaxy had always moved in patterns, quiet rhythms that rarely changed. Ships traveled from system to system, trade agreements were made, and diplomats from countless civilizations met in the gleaming chambers of the Galactic Council. Everything seemed orderly, predictable, and under control. But then a message arrived from one of the least expected places, Earth. It was not aggressive, not demanding, and not even long. Yet it carried a weight that none of the council members could ignore. The message said simply that no ship, under any circumstances, was to enter Terran space without explicit permission. At first, many laughed. Earth? One council member said, a representative from a distant star system with golden feathers cascading from its shoulders. That little blue planet? What could it possibly threaten in all this vast space? Others murmured in agreement. Earth had always been seen as small, unassuming, and slow compared to other advanced civilizations. Its ships rarely ventured far, and its scientists had long been seen as clever but cautious. The idea that such a planet could issue a warning that the entire council would take seriously seemed almost humorous, but the laughter died quickly. Even as they dismissed the warning, the council noticed changes. Terran space, once easy to scan and chart, had become strange. Their instruments could not penetrate far into the system. Ships sent to map the area returned with incomplete data, and sensors that had worked perfectly for decades now flickered, showing gaps, anomalies, and patterns that no one could explain. Something had changed. Something had been built, or discovered, or learned. And whatever it was, Earth was keeping it to itself. Analysts from the council began working day and night, examining the message and the surrounding systems. They studied the trajectory of Terran ships, the energy signatures of their atmosphere, and even the subtle pulses of communication that Earth still allowed to leave its borders. All of it suggested one thing: Earth was no longer the same. It was aware, prepared, and deliberate. Every action, every omission, every silence carried intention. Outside the council chambers, rumors spread. Merchants whispered that Earth was hiding something valuable, something that could upset the balance of power. Scholars speculated endlessly, suggesting everything from secret technologies to a hidden fleet capable of incredible speed. Diplomats wondered if Earth had made alliances with unknown civilizations beyond the known galaxy. For weeks, speculation filled every corner of discussion. No one knew the truth, and no one dared to cross the invisible line that Terran space now represented. Inside Earth itself, the situation was far simpler. Scientists, leaders, and engineers were not plotting to dominate the galaxy or wage war. They were focused, precise, and calm. There had been discoveries, yes, discoveries that were dangerous if mishandled and misunderstood if revealed prematurely. Advanced energy fluctuations had been detected on the edge of Terran space, phenomena that could disrupt travel, communications, and even the stability of nearby planets if approached carelessly. For the Terrans, the warning was necessary. It was not about power. It was about safety. From the Council's perspective, however, the lack of information was frustrating. Delegates argued endlessly about what to do. Some advocated sending scouts to test the boundaries, to see what Earth had built. Others insisted that this would be reckless, that no one could know the full extent of what lay within the protective boundaries. A few voices, quieter and more cautious, suggested patience. Earth had always been unpredictable in its own way, but it had also shown intelligence and foresight. Perhaps this was a situation best approached with respect. Despite the debate, curiosity won. Small research teams were assembled, tasked with observing from a safe distance. They launched probes equipped with the most advanced scanners the galaxy had to offer. These instruments were designed to penetrate even the most complex energy fields, to detect subtle shifts in magnetic waves, chemical changes in planetary atmospheres, and even the faintest gravitational distortions. But when the probes reached Terran borders, something remarkable happened. Their readings became unstable, inconsistent, and ultimately indecipherable. It was as if the probes themselves had encountered a barrier, one that was invisible but undeniable. The council convened again, this time in a tense and silent chamber. The hum of energy around them seemed heavier, the air more charged. Representatives spoke carefully, knowing that even a single misstep could provoke suspicion or even alarm. They reviewed every detail from the probes, every message intercepted, every small anomaly in energy readings. And slowly, a realization began to form. Earth was serious. The warning was not empty. It was enforceable, effective, and entirely non-negotiable. Across the galaxy, smaller civilizations noticed it too. Traders, explorers, and scientists who had once moved freely into the outer edges of Terran space now found themselves stopped. Automated systems guided ships back without explanation beyond a calm message. Unauthorized entry is not permitted. Please maintain distance. The message was polite, even courteous, but firm. No threats were made, no attacks launched. It was a simple boundary, maintained with precision. For some, this caused anger. For others, confusion. How could a planet so small impose such strict limits? Many council members feared the answer, though none would admit it aloud. Terran intelligence was not like theirs. It did not seek to dominate or to conquer. It sought to protect, to prepare, to survive. And that difference, subtle as it was, carried a power that the galaxy had not fully understood until now. The first days after the warning were quiet. Ships that had once sailed near Earth now turned back, their captains reporting little except the strange calm of the borders. Messages from Terran officials were brief, factual, and polite. They thanked visitors for their interest, but insisted that entry was impossible without permission. Each communication emphasized safety, responsibility, and the importance of preparation. Council members grew uneasy. They could feel the shift in energy across Terran space, a presence that was both silent and undeniable. Scholars tried to calculate the cause, engineers attempted to model the anomalies, and diplomats debated whether a formal request to enter could ever succeed. All of it led to the same conclusion. Earth had changed, and the galaxy was not yet ready to understand how or why. Even the Council's most confident members began to reconsider. If Earth could create boundaries without conflict, without aggression, and without revealing its full capabilities, then what else could it do? If a planet so seemingly ordinary could assert control over its own territory so decisively, what other surprises might it hold? The thought unsettled them more than they cared to admit. And so the galaxy waited. For the first time in generations, a simple message calm, precise, and firm had caused hesitation, debate, and even fear. The message had not demanded attention. It had earned it. Terran space had become more than a location on a map. It had become a statement, a reminder that intelligence, preparation, and responsibility could shape events without a single shot being fired. By the end of the first week, council members were no longer laughing. Earth was no longer just a small, distant planet. It was a force defined not by weapons or fleets, but by foresight, discipline, and an understanding of the dangers that lurked in the galaxy. And the warning, simple as it was, carried a lesson that would resonate far longer than anyone had anticipated. Sometimes, power is not in what you show the galaxy, but in what you choose to protect quietly, firmly, and wisely. As observers recorded the events, they began to realize something extraordinary. The silence of Terran space was not emptiness. It was intention. The calm, polite messages, the invisible barriers, the refusal to engage, these were all choices. Earth had decided how it wanted to interact with the galaxy, and it had done so on its own terms. That realization would shape every decision, every debate, and every plan the Council would make in the weeks to come. the story of the warning was only beginning. But already, it had shown that even the smallest voices, spoken with certainty and clarity, could command respect across the stars. And for the Council, the lesson was clear. Underestimate Earth at your own peril. After the warning from Earth, the galaxy became a quieter place in some ways, but more tense in others. Ships that once passed freely near Terran space now slowed down, hesitating at the edges of the protective boundary. Diplomats who had traveled for decades suddenly felt uncertainty where there had once been confidence. Traders whispered in corridors, scientists argued over measurements, and the Council itself was filled with an unfamiliar unease. Something was happening in Terran space, something deliberate and very different from anything anyone had expected. A team of researchers from a neutral planet was sent to observe from a distance. Their mission was simple, to study the changes near Earth without crossing the boundary. But simple as it seemed, the observations were puzzling. Energy fluctuations, invisible to most instruments, danced across the region. These weren't natural occurrences, like storms or solar flares. They moved in patterns, almost as if they were being controlled by an intelligent hand. And yet, there was no sign of weaponry, no fleets poised for attack, no signs of conflict. Only strange, shifting energy, calm but deliberate, like a silent warning that no one fully understood. The Council received constant reports, each one more confusing than the last. Sensors that had worked perfectly for centuries failed to penetrate Terran space. Messages sent toward Earth returned with delays or were blocked entirely, but in a way that suggested care, not malice. Every action or lack of action carried intention. The Terrans weren't trying to hide something dangerous in a threatening way. They were protecting something, and the galaxy didn't yet understand what that was. Smaller civilizations began testing the limits. Ships ventured closer, hoping to peek beyond the invisible line. Each time, the results were the same. Sensors went haywire, communications became distorted, and crews reported strange feelings, unease, vertigo, even a sense that the ship itself was resisting movement into Terran space. One crew described it as walking toward a thick fog that gently pushed them back, not violently, but firmly. When they returned home, they refused to speak openly about their experience. The only message sent to the Council was brief. Terran space is different now. While all of this was happening outside, Earth itself moved with quiet purpose. Scientists and engineers worked in concentrated teams, studying the patterns of energy that had begun to appear near their outer regions. They examined natural phenomena, calculated precise shifts in gravitational fields, and monitored cosmic fluctuations that could ripple through their system. These were not efforts to control the galaxy. They were efforts to understand, to predict, and to prepare. Every calculation, every experiment, every adjustment was made with care, knowing that even a small mistake could be catastrophic. For the Council, the lack of information was maddening. They tried everything to guess what was happening. Some believed Terrans had discovered a new kind of energy that could power entire systems. Others feared it was a defensive measure, something that could repel any approaching ships. A few even suggested that Terran technology had advanced beyond the galaxy's current understanding, creating barriers and protections that no other civilization could replicate. And yet, all of these were guesses. No one could confirm them. Every attempt to approach or study was blocked, and the more they tried, the more they realized that the Terrans were always one step ahead. Tensions grew among Council members. Debates became heated, although still polite and measured. One representative argued that Earth should be treated as a potential threat until proven harmless. Another insisted that they were acting responsibly and that the Council should respect their boundaries. Many counselors felt a mix of frustration and admiration. Frustration because they could not access the information they wanted. Admiration because Earth had created a system that was effective without aggression. They had set boundaries, enforced them, and done so in a way that did not harm anyone. That combination of control and restraint was rare, and in some ways, unsettling to those who were used to power being demonstrated through force. Outside of the council chambers, stories began to spread. Traders told tales of strange energy pulses, of fields that slowed their ships without explanation, and of instruments that simply refused to work near Terran space. Some of the stories were exaggerated, of course, but many came from credible sources. Scientists, explorers, and even retired diplomats shared observations that could not be ignored. The general consensus grew. Earth had changed. It was no longer just another planet in the galaxy. Its space had become a zone that demanded respect, and no one could fully explain why. Inside Earth, the mood was focused and calm. Leaders coordinated with scientists to monitor the outer borders. Engineers maintained energy shields and communication barriers. Even ordinary citizens were aware, in small ways, that something extraordinary was happening. Schools incorporated lessons about cosmic safety. Communities observed energy shifts in their own ways, and families discussed the importance of patience and care. There was no fear, but there was awareness, a sense that they were part of something important, something that required responsibility. The first weeks of observation revealed more than just energy anomalies. They showed the deliberate way Terrans moved within their own system. Ships were precise in their movements, using energy sources efficiently. Research stations functioned with quiet coordination. Even when minor problems arose, teams responded quickly and methodically, without panic. This consistency reinforced the sense that Earth's actions were not about power, but about control through knowledge, preparation, and intelligence. Meanwhile, the Council continued to debate what to do. Some suggested sending a diplomatic mission, hoping to negotiate access. Others feared that even approaching could disrupt Terran calculations or provoke defensive measures. A small group of cautious counselors began advocating for patience, arguing that understanding Earth required more than curiosity. It required respect. They pointed out that the very act of crossing into Terran space could itself create unpredictable consequences. For the first time, patience was being valued as highly as power or influence. One day, a small vessel from a minor civilization tried to cross into Terran territory. Its crew was curious, unprepared, and somewhat overconfident. As they approached the boundary, instruments failed one by one. Communications went silent. The vessel seemed to drift, as if caught in a gentle, invisible tide that resisted its forward motion. Hours passed. Then, without any explanation or confrontation, the ship was guided back to the edge of its own system. The crew was unharmed, but they returned shaken, their confidence replaced by a quiet respect and a deep, lingering mystery. The story spread quickly across the galaxy. The Council convened again, now with a new level of seriousness. It was clear that Earth's warning was not symbolic or bluffing. It was enforceable, effective, and deliberate. Terran space was no longer just a location on a map. It was an active zone, managed with intelligence and care. And the galaxy began to realize something extraordinary. For the first time, a civilization had established boundaries not through force, but through preparation, knowledge, and foresight. Even the skeptics began to reconsider. They had assumed that size and power equaled influence, that fleets and weapons were the ultimate measures of control. Earth had shown that influence could also come from restraint, intelligence, and careful management of what others could not yet see. This realization sparked debates that were no longer just about curiosity or strategy. They were about understanding the nature of power itself. Terran observers, meanwhile, continued their work quietly. They monitored energy patterns, adjusted protective systems, and studied the behavior of approaching vessels. Every decision was made with care, balancing the need for secrecy with the importance of safety. They did not seek to dominate or intimidate. They only sought to maintain stability for their own world and for the systems nearby. And in doing so, they were already teaching a lesson to the galaxy. That real strength is not in what you destroy, but in what you protect, and how wisely you do it. By the end of the first month of observation, a clear pattern emerged. Terran space was alive, dynamic, and carefully managed. Energy fluctuations moved like living currents, responding to probes, ships, and even distant Council observations. Communication barriers remained intact, polite, but firm. And the galaxy, for all its curiosity and impatience, had to accept one truth. Earth's warning was real. Terran space was not to be entered without permission, not because of fear, but because of responsibility. The galaxy waited, puzzled but increasingly respectful. Terran space had become a symbol of careful, intelligent restraint, a reminder that even in a vast universe, small voices spoken with certainty, clarity, and purpose could command attention, shape behavior, and create boundaries that no force could breach. And for the first time, the Council understood that the story of Earth was only beginning, and that the lessons it would teach were far more profound than anyone had imagined. The Galactic Council had never faced anything quite like Earth's warning. What had begun as curiosity had slowly turned into unease, and now it had become a topic of serious debate. Delegates filled the council chambers, their voices polite but tense, each one trying to assert their perspective. The issue was no longer whether Terran space was unusual. It was what that unusual behavior meant for the galaxy as a whole. Some council members argued that Earth might be preparing something technology, energy, or defenses beyond the understanding of most civilizations. They feared the unknown, imagining scenarios where Terran ingenuity could outmatch fleets or strategies the galaxy had relied on for centuries. Others took a different stance, pointing out that Earth had shown no aggression, no hostility, and no desire to interfere in the affairs of other civilizations. In fact, everything suggested that their warning was motivated by caution and care, not ambition. The debate stretched on for hours, then days. Specialists presented data from the outer observations, noting the strange energy fluctuations and subtle changes in gravitational fields near Terran space. Analysts had tried to simulate the effects, running models to predict how these fluctuations might influence ships, communications, or even nearby systems. Their simulations, however, failed. The patterns were too complex, too intelligent, too deliberate. Each time they thought they understood it, the situation shifted, responding in ways that suggested intention. Meanwhile, the public in many systems began to take notice. News of Earth's warning spread quickly, carried by trade networks, scientific forums, and even informal chatter among travelers. People speculated endlessly. Some feared a hidden weapon, imagining Terrans sitting silently on a secret fleet or advanced energy source. Others admired the wisdom of setting clear boundaries, recognizing the discipline and foresight required to do so successfully. Across the galaxy, opinions were mixed, but curiosity was universal. The Council, sensing the rising tension, called for more data. Research teams were sent to monitor energy patterns, observe Terran fleets, and study communication signals from afar. They discovered that Earth space was not just restricted. It was organized. Automated defense systems, invisible to most sensors, created a network of subtle checks and balances. No ship was harmed, yet none could proceed without explicit clearance. These systems responded to the environment, adjusting to incoming ships and energy fluctuations, making the outer borders seem alive and responsive. One particularly experienced observer described it as walking along a calm but moving river. The currents seemed to shift subtly, guiding objects without force, redirecting them with intelligence rather than aggression. Those who experienced it firsthand were often left in awe, unable to fully explain what had happened. The descriptions only added to the Council's unease. Earth had created a space that was controlled, predictable, and powerful, all without firing a single weapon. Within the council chambers, the discussion turned philosophical. What did it mean when a planet could command respect through intelligence? And preparation alone? Some delegates admitted quietly, far from the official microphones, that they had underestimated Earth. This small, distant planet had managed to create boundaries and enforce them in a way no one had anticipated. And yet, it had done so without conflict, without threats, and without revealing the full extent of its abilities. Amid the debates, a few counselors suggested sending a diplomatic envoy. If Earth was serious about keeping its space secure, perhaps understanding their intentions could build trust and reduce anxiety. Others strongly disagreed. They argued that sending a delegation could disturb Terran calculations or even provoke defensive measures, unintentionally creating the conflict everyone wanted to avoid. The more cautious voices emphasized patience and observation, insisting that the galaxy should respect Earth's decision to remain private while gathering information quietly. The decision was made to continue observing, but more closely, advanced. Sensors were deployed at the outer edges of Terran space, and teams of scientists were assigned to analyze fluctuations in energy, gravitational fields, and communications patterns. All efforts were non-invasive, designed to avoid triggering any protective mechanisms. Even so, results were inconsistent. Instruments that had worked perfectly elsewhere failed near Terran borders, returning incomplete or confusing readings. And every time researchers thought they had an explanation, new data revealed an unexpected shift. Not at the same time, Terran scientists and engineers continued their work inside the planet's borders. They monitored cosmic activity, energy currents, and the movements of celestial bodies near their system. Calculations were made, corrected, and recalculated, each step precise and careful. Every decision, no matter how small, was guided by the knowledge that their actions had consequences not only for themselves, but also for nearby systems. Earth's focus was not on impressing or intimidating others. It was on understanding and protecting. Even ordinary Terrans felt the subtle change. Schools added lessons about energy awareness and observation. Families discussed the importance of preparation, and communities paid attention to phenomena that might have been overlooked in quieter times. While life continued as usual in many ways, there was an underlying sense of responsibility. Everyone understood, in their own way, that their world was no longer just another planet in the galaxy. It had become a point of observation, curiosity, and perhaps caution for civilizations far beyond its borders. Back in the council chambers, tension grew. Some delegates worried that patience could lead to lost opportunities. What if Earth was hiding technology that could benefit the galaxy? Others argued that forcing access could have consequences far worse than missed opportunity. Every decision carried weight, and the unknown factor of Terran intelligence complicated every choice. The situation became a study in restraint, strategy, and respect for boundaries, teaching lessons the Council had rarely confronted before. Then came reports of minor incidents. Small ships from civilizations curious but unprepared approached Terran space despite warnings. Each one experienced subtle anomalies, energy fields that slowed or redirected them, communications that faded or distorted, instruments that refused to function properly. No one was harmed, but the effects left crews shaken. They returned with stories of a space that seemed alive, responsive, and aware. Observers struggled to describe it in words, often resorting to metaphors like rivers, tides, or invisible currents that guided and protected without aggression. These incidents reinforced a growing understanding across the galaxy. Terran boundaries were not walls of force or barriers of threat. They were carefully constructed systems of control and protection. Earth had achieved something remarkable. It had created an environment that enforced respect without coercion. And for many observers, this was more intimidating than fleets or weapons ever could be. The quiet intelligence, the deliberate caution, and the visible competence demanded recognition, and, in some cases, fear. Meanwhile, Earth continued to operate calmly within its borders. Leaders coordinated with engineers and scientists, maintaining observation posts, monitoring energy currents, and adjusting systems to respond to changes naturally. Every action, from the movement of ships to the management of energy fields, was calculated for maximum safety and minimum disruption. Nothing was reckless, and nothing was left to chance. It was a display of discipline and foresight, subtle yet powerful in its implications. Across the galaxy, public interest in Terran space grew. Citizens, scholars, and traders speculated about what might be happening inside the boundaries. Stories ranged from the possible discovery of a new energy source to the creation of advanced defensive systems, yet no one had concrete proof. And that uncertainty created fascination. People respected Earth for its caution, admired it for its intelligence, and in some cases, feared the unknown abilities it might possess. The Council, after weeks of discussion, came to a reluctant consensus. No one would attempt to cross the boundaries. No diplomatic mission would be sent without careful planning, and all observation would remain non-invasive. For the first time, the galaxy was learning the value of patience, respect, and observation over force. A small, distant planet had shown that boundaries could be enforced without aggression. That intelligence and preparation could inspire as much caution as firepower, and that calm determination could be more powerful than intimidation. The month ended with an unexpected sense of calm, but also of anticipation. Everyone knew the story was far from over. Terran space remained a zone of mystery, controlled yet open to observation in careful ways. Energy fluctuations continued, subtle but deliberate, reminding observers of the intelligence guiding them. And across the galaxy, the lesson became clear. Respect boundaries, even when the reason is not yet understood. Sometimes, restraint is the greatest measure of power. Observers began documenting everything carefully, creating detailed records of anomalies, energy patterns, and Terran behavior. Scholars wrote notes on the deliberate movements. Engineers studied the invisible systems, and diplomats recorded the reactions of crews who had approached. Slowly, a picture emerged, not complete, but enough to show that Earth's actions were deliberate, intelligent, and focused on protection rather than. Despite all the warnings, curiosity and impatience sometimes get the better of even the most careful civilizations. The galaxy had observed Earth for months, noting the subtle energy fluctuations, the invisible barriers, and the calm enforcement of boundaries. Reports had come from small exploratory vessels that had approached Terran space and returned shaken, but unharmed. These incidents were enough to convince most to wait, to respect the boundaries. Yet there were a few who could not resist testing the limits. A small vessel, belonging to a minor but ambitious civilization, decided to cross into Terran territory. The crew was experienced, skilled, and confident, but they underestimated the subtle intelligence of the systems protecting Terran space. Their instruments, which had never failed before, began to behave strangely almost immediately. Readings flickered, energy fields distorted, and communications with their home system became intermittent. At first, the crew assumed it was a technical malfunction, something they could fix with routine adjustments. But as they progressed deeper, the situation became more unsettling. The ship itself seemed to resist their commands. Controls responded slower, engines emitted unusual vibrations, and the navigation system produced paths that led nowhere or looped back on themselves. It was as if the ship was caught in an invisible current, gently guiding it away from the borders. The crew began to realize that this was not a malfunction. It was something external, deliberate, and beyond their understanding. Panic was not necessary, but unease began to grow. The calm efficiency that the crew prided themselves on was challenged in a way they had never experienced before. Back on Earth, scientists monitoring the borders noted the intrusion immediately. The systems were designed for this exact scenario, a ship entering without permission. The energy currents shifted subtly, guiding the vessel back toward the edge of the territory. At the same time, communication channels opened with a simple, calm message. Unauthorized entry is not permitted. Please maintain distance. You are safe. There was no threat, no alarm, no demand to surrender. Just a polite but firm statement, repeated automatically as the vessel was guided back. For the crew, the experience was bewildering. They reported that their instruments had failed in ways that should have been impossible, and yet no harm had come to them. They described the energy currents as almost alive, responding to their movements with intelligence, adjusting to their actions while maintaining a safe but firm boundary. The ship drifted for hours, seemingly at the mercy of something beyond comprehension, until it emerged back at the edge of its home system. By then, the crew was exhausted, disoriented, and deeply humbled. They had entered a space that was carefully managed, intelligent, and protective, and they had learned firsthand that Earth's warning was not an empty threat. News of the incident spread quickly. Even though the crew refused to provide detailed public accounts, the fact that a ship had entered and been returned unharmed, but unsettled, was enough to make waves across the galaxy. Council members gathered once again, their debates more serious than ever. Some were angry, believing the Terrans had overstepped by interfering with their vessel. Others recognized the wisdom of the Terran systems and cautioned against further testing or intrusion. For the first time, the Council as a whole began to see the power in restraint, discipline, and careful management of space. Analysts examined every detail available, trying to understand how Earth had managed the situation without conflict or danger. They noted that the energy fields were subtle, yet precise. They responded to the ship's movements in real time, guiding it without contact or force. Communications were polite but firm, establishing authority without hostility. And the most remarkable observation was that the Terrans had created this system with foresight, anticipating not only intrusion, but also human or alien error, responding in a way that maintained safety for all involved. Within Earth, the response was calm and methodical. Teams reviewed the incident, not with alarm, but with careful attention to detail. Engineers and scientists adjusted energy flows, monitored for any anomalies caused by the ship's presence, and ensured that the automated systems continued to function perfectly. Leaders made a note of the event in official records, emphasizing that the warning had been enforced correctly and that no harm had come to the intruders. For them, the success of the system was a validation of the careful planning and intelligence that had gone into every aspect of Terran space management. The incident prompted reflection across the galaxy. Diplomats who had long underestimated Earth began to reconsider. Scholars wrote detailed reports analyzing the energy patterns, the invisible barriers, and the calm enforcement of boundaries. Traders who had once joked about Earth now spoke with quiet respect, acknowledging the intelligence and foresight required to maintain such a protective system. Even those who were frustrated by the inability to access Terran space admitted that there was something extraordinary about the way the planet managed its borders. The crew of the intruding vessel became unwitting ambassadors. Their accounts, though limited, were shared in private circles. They described the energy currents as intelligent, responsive, and protective, and they emphasized that no aggression had occurred. The experience left them with a profound respect for Terran systems and a cautionary awareness that intelligence and planning could create power without the need for force. Their story, even when incomplete, spread a new understanding of Earth's capabilities and intentions. Back at the Council, discussions turned philosophical. What did it mean for a civilization to assert boundaries without aggression? How could intelligence, discipline, and foresight achieve respect where fleets and weapons might fail? These questions dominated the council chambers for weeks. Some council members argued that Earth had created a model for responsible behavior, demonstrating how boundaries could be maintained safely and effectively. Others struggled to accept that such power could exist without overt displays of dominance. As the weeks passed, the galaxy began to accept a new reality. Earth was no longer a minor planet on the edge of known space. It had become a point of authority, a model for restraint and intelligence, and a symbol of responsibility. Civilizations that had once considered ignoring the warnings now approached them with caution, curiosity, and respect. The lesson was clear. Attempting to challenge or circumvent Terran space could result in confusion, disorientation, or failure, but never unnecessary harm. Within Earth, life continued with its quiet focus. Scientists refined energy fields, engineers maintained automated systems, and leaders monitored developments both inside and outside the borders. Ordinary citizens remained aware of the unusual attention their planet was receiving, yet there was no fear or arrogance. Communities continued their routines. Schools taught lessons about responsibility and observation, and families discussed the importance of careful action. The planet's calm and deliberate approach contrasted sharply with the anxiety and curiosity it inspired in the galaxy beyond. The first major incident had proven several things. Terran boundaries were real, enforceable, and deliberate. The systems protecting the planet were intelligent, responsive, and designed to ensure safety rather than harm. And perhaps most importantly, Earth had demonstrated that respect could be earned without aggression. Authority could be asserted without conflict, and power could exist quietly, yet undeniably. In ways the galaxy had never anticipated, council members, diplomats, and scholars all took note. Some began to advocate for careful diplomacy, hoping that mutual understanding could develop over time. Others simply recommended patience, observing Terran space without interference and accepting the lessons it offered. Across the galaxy, the incident became a case study in intelligence, preparation, and restraint, a story that would be discussed for years to come. Even as curiosity persisted, the clear message from Earth was respected. Unauthorized entry was not tolerated, not because Earth sought to dominate or control, but because the systems in place served a protective purpose. Every observation, every adjustment, and every automated response was designed to maintain stability and safety. It was a lesson in responsibility and foresight, one that the galaxy could learn from even without understanding every detail. The incident also changed the perception of Terran intelligence. Where once the planet had been seen as cautious and unassuming, it was now recognized as capable of subtle, sophisticated control. Observers marveled at how a civilization could maintain such precise boundaries, enforce safety, and communicate authority without confrontation. The experience challenged old assumptions about power, influence, and control in the galaxy, showing that true strength could come from planning, discipline, and care rather than force or intimidation. Months passed, and the memory of the incident lingered. Ships that once might have tested the boundaries remained cautious. Scholars and analysts continued to study Terran systems from afar, trying to understand the intelligent design behind the energy fields, automated responses, and communication protocols. And within the Council, the debate evolved from speculation and curiosity to recognition and respect. Earth had established a new standard for what it meant to protect, to enforce, and to be responsible in a vast and unpredictable galaxy. For months, the galaxy had been watching Terran space with curiosity, concern, and growing respect. Observers, council members. And scholars speculated endlessly about the invisible boundaries, the strange energy currents, and the calm enforcement of rules that kept outsiders from entering without permission. Despite all the mystery, Earth had remained quiet, patient, and deliberate, never seeking attention, confrontation, or conflict. And then, finally, after the first major incident, a message arrived from Terran leadership. It was simple, direct, and calm, but it carried a revelation that would change the galaxy's understanding forever. The message explained, in concise terms, why Terran space was off limits. Scientists had detected a massive cosmic anomaly near the outer edges of their system, phenomenon that could destabilize not only their own planets, but also nearby star systems if approached carelessly. The anomaly was unpredictable, dangerous, and capable of disrupting energy fields, communication systems, and even the flow of space itself. For safety, the Terrans had reinforced their borders, creating energy currents and automated systems that guided unauthorized ships away without causing harm. It was not a weapon. It was a protective measure designed to ensure that no one, including themselves, could accidentally trigger a catastrophe. The revelation shocked the Galactic Council. For weeks they had speculated about hidden technology, secret fleets, or advanced defenses. No one had imagined that the true reason for the boundaries was cosmic safety, a threat so large and complex that only careful, intelligent management could prevent disaster. Council members read the message multiple times, discussing its implications quietly in private chambers. Even the most skeptical began to understand that Terrans had acted not out of arrogance or ambition, but out of foresight, responsibility, and careful calculation. Across the galaxy, the news spread quickly. Traders, explorers, and scholars shared the official communication, each trying to grasp the scale of the anomaly and the intelligence required to manage it. Some struggled to understand how a single planet could develop systems capable of protecting not just itself, but potentially entire star systems from a force they could barely comprehend. Others marveled at the restraint Earth had shown, the discipline and precision with which they enforced boundaries, and the care taken to avoid harming anyone inside Earth. The revelation was not a moment of pride, but a reaffirmation of purpose. Scientists continued their monitoring, engineers refined energy flows, and leaders coordinated the dissemination of information. Their priority had always been protection and safety, and now the galaxy understood the reasoning behind the boundaries. Citizens, while aware of the anomaly, were largely unaffected in daily life, continuing their routines with the knowledge that their planet was performing a vital task for the safety of all. Schools, research institutions, and local communities emphasized observation, preparation, and responsibility, reinforcing the culture of caution and intelligence that had guided the planet's response. The Council now faced a new set of challenges. How could they interact with Earth in a way that respected its boundaries while still engaging in diplomacy, trade, and knowledge exchange? Some members wanted to propose joint projects to study the anomaly, offering scientific resources and expertise. Others argued that such collaborations should be carefully controlled, acknowledging that even well-meaning efforts could disrupt the delicate balance of Terran systems. The discussion was no longer about speculation or suspicion. It was about understanding, cooperation, and careful engagement. Observers reported that Terran systems continued to operate calmly and efficiently. Energy currents adjusted in real time, monitoring the anomaly and maintaining safety across the borders. Automated communication systems ensured that messages were delivered politely, accurately, and consistently. No ship had been harmed, no system disrupted, and no panic induced. Every action reinforced the lesson that responsibility, foresight, and intelligent planning could achieve results far beyond what brute force ever could. The minor civilization, whose ship had been redirected months earlier, now received further clarification. Officials explained the nature of the anomaly and the importance of enforcing boundaries. The crew, previously shaken by their experience, now understood the reasoning behind what had happened. Their respect for Earth deepened, as did their appreciation for the intelligence, foresight, and careful management required to protect not just a planet, but potentially entire systems from harm. Across the galaxy, the perception of Earth shifted. No longer seen as a minor or cautious planet, it was now recognized as a model of responsibility, foresight, and intelligence. Scholars wrote detailed analyses of the anomaly, Terran energy management systems, and the calm enforcement of boundaries. Traders adjusted their routes and plans, understanding that unauthorized entry was both unwise and unnecessary. Diplomats began drafting protocols for engagement that would respect Earth's systems. Acknowledging that cooperation required patience, observation, and careful planning, the revelation also prompted philosophical reflection. What did it mean for a civilization to act responsibly on such a large scale? How could intelligence, preparation, and foresight achieve respect and influence without aggression or domination? Across the galaxy, thinkers debated these questions, using Earth as an example of how restraint, discipline, and careful observation could shape relationships, protect systems, and command respect. It became clear that power did not always require force. Sometimes it required understanding, responsibility, and the courage to act carefully in the face of uncertainty. Within Earth, the focus remained on observation and adjustment. Scientists continued to study the anomaly, running simulations, adjusting energy flows, and monitoring patterns that could shift unpredictably. Engineers maintained automated systems, ensuring that every protective measure functioned precisely and efficiently. Leaders coordinated both internal and external communication, sharing information that was essential for understanding without compromising safety. Even ordinary citizens were aware of the careful, quiet work being done to maintain stability. The revelation of the anomaly and the reasoning behind the boundaries also fostered a sense of connection across civilizations. While the anomaly was dangerous and unpredictable, Terran systems had prevented harm not only to themselves, but potentially to others. This quiet act of responsibility inspired admiration, respect, and even a sense of shared purpose. Across the galaxy, observers recognized that Earth's actions were guided by ethics as well as intelligence, demonstrating a commitment to the safety and stability of the larger community. Council debates evolved once more. Proposals were made for controlled observation, joint scientific research, and careful communication protocols. Every plan emphasized respect for Terran boundaries, recognizing that safety and preparation were paramount. Some counselors suggested that Earth could serve as a model for managing complex, unpredictable phenomena, offering lessons that extended far beyond the immediate situation. Others cautioned that cooperation must be approached carefully, noting that even well-intentioned interference could create risks. As weeks passed, the galaxy settled into a new rhythm. Observers continued to monitor Terran space, now fully aware of the anomaly and the careful systems managing it. Ships and crews maintained safe distances, following protocols and respecting boundaries. Scholars studied reports, noting the intelligence, foresight, and discipline required to maintain safety. And across civilizations, the lesson became clear. Responsibility, careful planning, and foresight could achieve results that raw power could not. Inside Earth, life continued with calm efficiency. Citizens carried out daily routines, scientists refined models, engineers maintained systems, and leaders coordinated observation and communication. Awareness of the anomaly and the galaxy's interest added a subtle weight to daily life, but it did not disrupt the routines, culture, or communities. Instead, it reinforced a sense of purpose. Careful, intelligent action could protect life, maintain stability, and inspire respect without aggression or dominance. The revelation also clarified the nature of past incidents. Ships that had entered Terran space unknowingly were not threatened or harmed. They had simply been guided back to safety. Crews that had reported strange energy fluctuations, disrupted instruments, and invisible currents now understood the reason. Every unusual occurrence had been part of a carefully managed system designed to maintain safety, enforce boundaries, and prevent catastrophe. In retrospect, the galaxy began to see these events not as threats, but as demonstrations of intelligence and foresight. The Galactic Council, once skeptical and frustrated, now approached Earth with renewed respect. Diplomats drafted careful protocols for engagement. Scientists proposed joint research under strict supervision, and traders adjusted their routes with consideration for safety. Across civilizations, admiration grew for the discipline, intelligence, and ethics demonstrated by Earth. It became a symbol of how foresight and responsibility could shape relationships, enforce boundaries, and maintain stability across a vast and unpredictable galaxy. In private chambers, council members reflected on lessons learned. They had assumed that power required weapons, fleets, or aggressive displays. After months of observation, speculation, and the revelation of the cosmic anomaly, the galaxy began to settle into a new understanding of Earth and its role in the wider universe. The Terrans had shown patience, intelligence, and foresight in ways few civilizations had ever witnessed. What had once been a zone of mystery and potential danger had become a symbol of careful responsibility, a lesson in the power of restraint and the value of knowledge over force. Even as respect for Earth grew, curiosity remained. Scientists and diplomats from various civilizations continued to propose controlled observation, carefully designed studies, and monitored exchanges of information. Every effort was approached with caution, knowing that the systems protecting Terran space were intelligent, responsive, and unforgiving to carelessness. Earth, in turn, welcomed collaboration under strict guidelines, ensuring that any interaction would maintain safety, prevent disruptions, and respect the natural order of the anomaly and the surrounding space. The first cooperative missions were simple but significant. Small research teams were allowed to study energy patterns from a distance, using instruments that had been calibrated and approved by Terran engineers. Communications were carefully monitored, and every observation was logged and shared openly between participating civilizations. These early efforts fostered trust, demonstrating that Earth's boundaries were not walls built to isolate, but careful protections designed to allow safe, controlled interaction. Within Earth, the response to these collaborations was deliberate. Scientists continued to refine energy flows, monitor the anomaly, and maintain automated systems. Engineers ensured that every adjustment, even minor ones, would not disrupt the protective currents or compromise safety. Leaders coordinated communication with external civilizations, emphasizing transparency, clarity, and calm. Citizens, while aware of the increasing attention from the galaxy, maintained their routines, schools, and communities, reinforcing a culture of responsibility, awareness, and careful observation. The first international teams of scientists carefully selected and trained were given access to data about the anomaly under strict supervision. They observed energy patterns, studied gravitational shifts, and examined the automated systems in operation. The more they learned, the more they were amazed. Terran systems operated with precision, intelligence, and foresight. Every boundary, every current, and every communication was designed to prevent harm, maintain stability, and enforce respect without confrontation. The lessons they learned reshaped their understanding of what it meant to be responsible in space. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council used the events to revise protocols for engagement, observation, and cooperation. Earth had shown that intelligence, foresight, and planning could enforce respect as effectively as fleets or weaponry. Policies were developed to encourage patience, careful observation, and controlled interaction when dealing with civilizations that had similar protective or delicate systems. The galaxy was learning to value restraint as much as it valued strength. Thanks to the example set by Earth, even civilizations that had once been skeptical began to change their approach. Traders, explorers, and smaller colonies respected the established boundaries, understanding that attempting unauthorized entry could have unpredictable consequences. Observers noted that ships adjusted their courses, crews carefully followed protocols, and communications were conducted with measured language and full awareness of Earth systems. The lessons were being applied widely. Intelligence, foresight, and responsibility could shape behavior across vast distances and among diverse civilizations. The anomaly itself remained dangerous, but Earth had transformed it from a threat into an opportunity for learning. Research teams studied the phenomenon, developing new methods of observation, simulation, and prediction. Every discovery reinforced the importance of caution, preparation, and intelligence. And every observation confirmed what had become increasingly clear to the galaxy. Earth was not seeking to dominate, but to maintain safety, stability, and responsible management of a potentially catastrophic phenomenon. Over time, the first signs of trust emerged. Civilizations began proposing joint projects, sharing technology and techniques under Terran guidance. Engineers and scientists worked together on simulations, energy management, and communication systems, always under strict safety protocols. The collaboration demonstrated that when intelligence, foresight, and respect were combined, even dangerous cosmic phenomena could be studied safely and effectively. These efforts strengthened the idea that Earth's methods were not only protective, but also exemplary, showing a model for responsible engagement in space, taught the lessons extended beyond science and safety. Philosophers, scholars, and ethicists debated the implications of Earth's approach. Could restraint and foresight become a guiding principle in diplomacy? Could careful planning and intelligent management of dangerous phenomena replace aggressive displays of power as a measure of authority? Across the galaxy, these discussions reshaped understanding of what it meant to govern responsibly, maintain peace, and interact ethically with other civilizations. Meanwhile, inside Earth, citizens continued their daily lives with a quiet pride. Schools taught lessons about cosmic observation, responsibility, and careful management of resources. Families discussed the importance of foresight and preparation, not as a source of fear, but as a necessary part of life. Communities supported research teams and shared in the culture of awareness that had grown over months of observation, cooperation, and engagement with the galaxy. Earth's calm, deliberate approach had become a way of life, a reflection of the intelligence and responsibility guiding the planet Dot. As trust grew, more complex projects were allowed. Civilizations sent skilled engineers and scientists to assist in monitoring the anomaly from approved stations. These collaborations produced breakthroughs in energy prediction, system stabilization, and safe communication across long distances. Every project reinforced the central lesson: careful observation, planning, and restraint could achieve outcomes that aggression and force could not. Terran methods had become a blueprint, showing how intelligence and ethics could shape relationships and maintain safety on a galactic scale. Even small, distant civilizations learned from the example. They developed internal systems to monitor hazards, manage resources responsibly, and enforce boundaries without conflict. The story of Earth inspired a new way of thinking about power, responsibility, and cooperation. Observers recorded the success of Terran methods. Diplomats applied the lessons in negotiations, and engineers adapted techniques for local hazards. The ripple effects of Earth's careful management spread far beyond the anomaly, influencing behavior across multiple star systems. The Galactic Council, now fully aware of the scale of Earth's achievement, acknowledged the planet's unique role. Official recognition was granted for the management of the anomaly, the enforcement of boundaries, and the establishment of safe systems that protected both Earth and surrounding civilizations. The Council highlighted Earth's example in lessons for future interstellar engagement, emphasizing that intelligence, foresight, and ethical responsibility could redefine relationships and expectations in space. By the end of this period, the galaxy had transformed its perception of Earth. What was once a distant, curious planet was now respected as a model of intelligence, foresight, and responsibility. The boundaries of Terran space were understood as protective, the energy systems as precise and intelligent, and the enforcement as calm but effective. Even civilizations that had once doubted or challenged Earth now approached with curiosity, respect, and careful planning. Inside Earth, life continued with balance. Citizens engaged in everyday routines, scientists advanced research, engineers maintained systems, and leaders coordinated cooperation with the galaxy. Awareness of the anomaly and the growing respect from other civilizations added a subtle weight, but it did not disrupt the calm, responsible culture that had guided the planet from the beginning. Instead, it reinforced a sense of purpose. Careful, intelligent action could protect life, maintain stability, and inspire respect across vast distances. In time, a network of knowledge and cooperation grew. Scientists, engineers, and scholars from multiple civilizations worked together under Terran guidance to study cosmic phenomena safely. Diplomats developed communication protocols that respected boundaries while allowing controlled exchanges. Observers documented methods of energy management, boundary enforcement, and responsible governance, creating lessons that would influence galactic policy for generations. The galaxy had learned not only about the anomaly, but also about the value of intelligence, foresight, and ethical responsibility. Even centuries later, the first incidents of intrusion and the initial warnings remained important historical lessons. They demonstrated how restraint, preparation, and careful planning could prevent disaster. They showed that intelligence, not aggression, could enforce boundaries. And they revealed that respect and authority could be earned through foresight, discipline, and ethical responsibility rather than through force alone. Earth's approach had fundamentally reshaped the galaxy's understanding of power, cooperation, and safety.